Today on the No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast, episode number 25. Can food change a mood? We answer those questions with my guest, Rachel Kelly from rachelkelly.net. Next in the podcast, let's do this.
Welcome to the No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast, a podcast about a journey of discovery and conversations about not sitting on the sideline of life. Let's get involved. Here's host Joe Foley.
Welcome. Hey, I really want to say thank you for being here. I know as crazy, busy adult and parent, our time is limited, so you choose to spend time with me. It means a lot. This is your first time to listen to the podcast. Welcome. But I have a conversation about what it means to be a dad, mom. Just a crazy, busy person trying to get through this day and every day of the week. I want this podcast. I have a sense of community. I want to say thank you for being here. So the community, I want to be able to talk to you. There'll be interviews, topics, and discussions about stuff we all deal with. I say we're all going through the same issues, but I'm saying similar but not same. I'm not an expert. I'm just a dad on a journey trying to take one day at a time in this crazy, busy world. Learning new things along the way. It's fun. Also, I really enjoy connecting with you. This is why I do the podcast. So reach out to and connect to me. My contact information is nosittingonthesideline.com/contact. I really like to hear from you and connect. Next up, my interview with Rachel Kelly from rachelkelly.net. Rachel Kelly is a mental health advocate, public speaker, writer, and a former journalist. She wrote books covering topics from depression. Her new book called Happy Kitchen. In the book, Rachel talks about different types to help food improve your mood. Each chapter is broken down into different topics. Chapter 1, for example, it's on balanced energy. I really like how the book's broken down for balanced energy. And the other topics too, like beating blues and sweet dreams. Each chapter is broken down into these three components: recipes, essential food, and meal planner. I really like how that's broken down. Rachel was diagnosed in her early 30s with severe depression, suffered two really serious depressive episodes. Those two depressive episodes, really tough ones, became the turning point in her life. Rachel's written books about her condition and how she recovered. Her books have been read by thousands of readers. Here are some of the books that Rachel has written. Black Rainbow. It's also been a Sunday Times bestseller 2014. Her other book is Walking on Sunshine, 52 Small Steps to Happiness. It was an international bestseller. And Rachel's latest book, The Happy Kitchen, Good Mood Food. The book was published in January 2017. It will be available in the U.S. on September 2017. Me and Rachel have a discussion about different topics about her experience through depression and how food can help your mood. So I don't want to waste any more time. I think it's a really cool, I'll say really cool, really good interview. So let's jump right in. Today on the podcast, my guest, Rachel Kelly. She's an author and a depression survivor. Welcome, Rachel. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. I know this has been a kind of a fun, interesting scheduling thing, but I really do appreciate you being here. So you tell us more about yourself?
Yeah, so there's really been two defining episodes in my life. And what happened was in my early 30s, I was a journalist. I was working at the Times newspaper in London. And with this insomnia came some quite kind of alarming physical symptoms. My heart rate speeded up. I felt really sick. I felt like I was falling. I kept thinking I had to hold on to something. Anyway, basically, I didn't get to sleep. The next day, I thought, right, well, I'll kind of refast activity to a normal timetable and I'll get back to normal. But I didn't. I didn't get to sleep the next night. And in 3 days, 3 nights like that, I found myself in hospital. And it was a psychiatric hospital. It was the start of a major depressive episode. I was pretty ill for around 6 months, but I did get my act back together again. I got back to work. But then, unfortunately, a few years later, I had a second major episode. And pretty much that time I was ill for around 2 years, couldn't really do anything, completely out of action, couldn't look after my children, couldn't work. And that was about 8, 9 years ago. So basically, since then, I've just been trying to learn about mental health and what makes for good mental health. And yeah, I've written 4 books about it now. And they all share kind of what I've learned, my story, but also the good scientific evidence about how to look after your mental health.
What is one thing you do every day that will help you with mental health? Like, do you like in the morning? Do you like people sometimes have a quiet moment before they get started the day? How would your day go? Like in the beginning of the day for that stuff like that?
Yeah, it's a really good point because I find if I get my first if I get the first bit of the day right, then everything else pretty much falls into place reasonably well. So I do have a routine in the morning. I use quite a lot of breathing exercises to stay calm. So I think when I look back at my anxiety, it was like I was worried about the future or I regretted the past, but I wasn't in the moment. And if you think about breathing, you can't breathe in the future, you can't breathe in the past, you can only breathe right now. So normally when I wake up, I'm still sometimes a bit anxious when I wake up. My quite common that like anxiety is worse in the morning. It's better. Sorry, I'm just going to switch that off. It's often like worse in the morning for people, and that's the case for me. So anyway, when I wake up, I use a few calming breathing exercises and a couple of stretches before I start the day properly. And then I have a kind of maybe a kind of unusual routine in the sense that I like to get outside first thing. So I get outside, I get the dog, a big part of my mental health, actually, the dog. And I either bicycle or I walk to a local cafe, and then I try and sit and have a nice, calm cup of coffee. I allow myself one coffee. You don't have too much extras in it. It's okay. Yeah, and then that tends to be a good start to the day. Is if I stick to this very kind of nice, calm routine to get started, especially the breathing and the stretches to start with. Incidentally, in the middle of that, the children go off to school, but they're turning 14, so they're pretty good at getting themselves up and breakfasted now.
How is that being a parent? How is that dealing with the depression? How's that been for you? I mean, there must be a real struggle when you're going through stuff like that.
Yeah, there were some pretty bad times. I mean, when I was really ill, I was sort of quite suicidal, to be honest, because it wasn't that I didn't have a nice life. I didn't like my life. I did actually have a really good life, but it was so physically painful, and I didn't really realize that it can express itself in a very physical way. So I think what I think now, it's not just that mental and physical health are connected. They're actually indissoluble. So like when you're really anxious and depressed, you can have these symptoms like you can feel very nauseous, you can't sleep, you have this kind of racing heart. It is an illness. You do feel really unwell. Well, I did. So I think that was why I felt, at times really desperate because I just couldn't bear the pain any longer. But I have also got better because I think what I've learned is that it is an illness. Something goes wrong with our head, but it does happen in a context, and we can help that context in some of the ways we live our life. Some of the lifestyle interventions like what we eat, and what I think now is that there may have been an evolutionary purpose for like major anxiety or depression. We're maybe being sent a message that maybe there's some stuff we need to change. So I think that's where I've ended up. That you may have depression and anxiety, but hopefully not for a long time. I think the problem is when it's chronic and ongoing, and you don't change anything.
Well, I guess it's a good transition. I guess your book, The Happy Kitchen, Good Mood Food. What can you elaborate? What's that book about?
Well, what happened was over the last 8, 9 years, I was trying some of these different techniques. Like I was doing some mindfulness, some of these breathing exercises, some exercise. I changed my work life. I moved away from being like a journalist in a newsroom, and I have a very different kind of work life now. I do still write, but I write books rather than being under the pressure of journalistic deadlines. But I went to see my GP, my general practitioner, about 5 years ago, and we were chatting through some of my strategies for staying well. And then just as I was leaving, she said, "What about happy foods?" And I said, "What do you mean happy food?" She said, "Well," she said, "I'm not a nutritionist, but she said there's some really good evidence about how what you eat can affect your mental health, because turns out the brain and the gut are really linked. There's a nerve actually that links them, the vagus nerve. And yeah, so then I started working with this nutritionist, a really lovely lady, Alice McIntosh, about 5 years ago. And we spent 5 years putting together recipes. We put together 70 recipes based on 150 nutritional studies. And we divided our book into 7 chapters, and all the symptoms that I'd had, like insomnia, low mood, lack of energy. But we're really positive. So we say, what can you eat for balanced energy, to beat the blues, to stay nice and calm, hormonal peace, to sleep well. And yeah, we put it all together in a cookbook. So yeah, that's been a lot of fun. That's been my most recent book.
Well, it's interesting when you do eat good food. You're in a good mood, but if you eat like 3 slices of pizza, you're going to feel sluggish, tired, and grumpy.
That is so right. And yeah, easy way to remember it is avoid crap. Sorry about the acronym. But yeah, carbonated drinks, refined sugars, aspartame and additives, and processed meats and processed foods. If you avoid those 4, so I work with some groups now for some of the mental health charities in the UK. If you do that, and also you help your good gut bacteria, so you eat more of the prebiotics and the probiotics. The probiotics are the healthy bacteria, things like yogurt and fermented foods. You can see changes to your mood in one day. It's amazing.
It's amazing what food and actually, I'm drinking water. I'm drinking more water than I actually coffee and the carbonated beverages. And I can see my energy increase instead of drinking like 5 coffees, because I'm more, because it seems like when you don't drink a lot of the dehydration could play a big deal in your mood and your health.
Such a good point. We have some studies on that in our mental clarity chapter. If you want to think straight, you need to be hydrated. And the first thing, if you're trying to solve a problem, have a glass of water.
And also fills you up and you don't eat that crap.
Yeah. It's a really good point. So it's interesting. I think that what you say really resonates in the sense that I think that people's mental health is kind of complicated and nuanced. Everybody's different and has a different set of cards. But I think what's really positive is that some of these interventions, they're really simple. They're not that hard to do. If you do a lot of them together, and that's what all the research shows, if you do a whole series of different things, you can make a massive difference. I'm pretty cheerful these days.
Well, it's interesting about mental health and stuff that when you get a certain age, everybody has a certain kind of, I'd say, stuff they need to deal with. That's a good word for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I so agree that no one escapes the bumps in the road.
Absolutely.
They're going to happen to all of us. That the redundancy, divorce, bereavement, illness, it's going to happen to all of us. So I kind of learned it's not so much what happens, it's always how you react to it. And you can learn how you respond to things.
I think there was I think it's like 80-20 or 90-10 or I don't know, more your reaction to things, and I'm not sure how that goes, but how you react. But I guess next thing I would talk about is walking on sunshine, 50 small steps to happiness. What is the 52 steps, the small steps to happiness? You want to go over a few of them?
Yeah, well, I can share a few of them with you. So basically what I do here is I run workshops for people who are finding life difficult, as I say, for some of these big mental health charities. So what I did is I kept a diary of each of my workshops every week of the year. So there's 52 of them. So right through the year, and they slightly can affect some of the seasonal. They reflect some of the seasons. So for example, here in the UK, one of the problems people have with low mood is they don't get enough vitamin D. So one of my small steps in the winter months is that now the UK advice is that everybody should take a vitamin D supplement from October through to March. So that would be a sort of small thing that you can do. Reflecting the seasons. So there's other things in the book. There's things like some of the breathing exercises. So, for example, it's a really simple one I can show you. If you just literally, you put one finger on one nostril, and then you just keep breathing normally, it just slows down the rate at which you breathe. So sometimes when we get agitated or anxious, we start to hyperventilate, we speed up. And like, say you've got a stressful meeting, you could just discreetly, just quietly slow the rate you breathe, and it just kind of calms you down. So another one I use is I have these like little pockets in the day, like you were saying, things that I do every day, but I have these little mindful activities. So they're like little full stops in the day. Because my thing is I get anxious and I overwhelmed. I get too busy. So one of the things I do is wash my glasses, and I smell the soap, I feel the water, I really appeal to all the senses, and just in that moment of slowing down, it really helps reduce my anxiety. So there's things like that, and then there's a few other things like I use a few mantras. So I have like little slogans I use that, again, just a few one-liners that just help calm me down. Sometimes my handbag's just there, and I have a few in there on postcards. I have some in the bathroom on the mirror. So I don't know. It could be something like one I like that it comes from the Bible. I'm quite religious, and there's a thing in Corinthians. It says, "My strength is made perfect in weakness."
Hmm.
And I love that. So when sometimes you feel like you're hopeless, and you feel very weak and powerless, and actually I feel that our strength can be made perfect in weakness. Or maybe something like this too will pass, just to have a sense of how things can move. So they're just ideas that like that. They're strategies for the body, strategies for the mind, just little steps that get you through. Because basically, I think if people aren't feeling great, you can't just say like change your life 100%. That's just never going to work.
No.
But it's like a little butterfly wing. You put a few things together, it can cause a tornado across the world. And that's how I think of things. Little steps really build up.
You said also too that you're the official ambassador for the Rethink Mental Illness. What is that about?
Yeah. Yeah, so when I started trying to look after my mental health, one of the bits of evidence I looked at, which is that actually it's really good for our mental health to try and do things for other people. Obviously we try and help other people, but actually the real person it helps is ourselves. So decided to try and get alongside some of the big charities here. I became a volunteer at my local prison.
Mm-hmm.
I work with prisoners. I run workshops in my local prison, and I also got alongside some of the charities. So a lot of the charities, they have support groups of people finding life difficult. So I go and share some ideas with them. Sometimes I run a nutrition workshop, a good mood food workshop with Alice. We share some recipes and some of the research we came across in nutrition. Or sometimes I run poetry workshops. I love poetry. And I was really honored. I was asked to become an official ambassador to represent the charity. So I do a few events for them. And they are really making a difference in the UK because there's not a lot of help out there for people in the state services in mental health, and the charities kind of fill the gaps.
What is it like working in the jail, the prison? We're working alongside those and helping them. How does that go? How's that for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I find it really rewarding. I mean, the days I go in, I don't go that often because I need to. There's a lot of cutbacks in the prison guards, and unless they have enough people to accompany my workshops, they do get cancelled. But anyway, I still get to go, and the days I go, they're always the best days of my week. I mean, you really puts your life into perspective to see people who are finding life very, really difficult, and that's just very, very rewarding. And I mean, there are programs in prisons for sort of basic literacy and, numeracy and things. But what most UK prisons don't have. I don't know the situation in the US, but in the UK, there's very little what you might call therapeutic help. There's very little sort of emotional support. So people seem to really value, some of the men that I work with, some wonderful poetry, which is consoling and gives people hope and courage that they're not alone, and that seems to fill a particular kind of a lack of emotional support that prisoners really suffer from.
It's very helpful for them, especially being incarcerated and all that time alone. It's very helpful for them.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I think maybe more for me, but yeah, I hope. Sometimes I get wonderful feedback. It is true.
Also, there's Young Minds, and there's a Young Minds Insane in the counseling foundation. What was that about?
Yeah, so there's some more charities. I mean, I'm really probably 3/4 of my work now is pretty much involved with charities. So Sane is another charity. It's a particular campaigning charity. It's it's like obviously to be sane as opposed to suffering from mental illness, and they run a really great hotline for people who are finding life really hard. They're also a real campaigning group. They're really fighting against stigma. Young Minds, again, I work with them. That's for more like teenagers. We have a big problem with anxious and depressed teenagers in the UK, especially a big new at-risk group in the UK is teenage girls. They're under a lot of pressure, social media, sort of eating disorders, things like that. So Young Minds, that's what they're concentrating on. And I think obviously prevention is better than cure. So if you can get to young people ahead of developing major problems, most mental illness starts when people are quite young. So if you can get in there and share some strategies, some of the evidence-based things that work, that's really rewarding because you're kind of stopping people having problems in the first place. Yeah, so that's Young Minds. And then the last one is the Counseling Foundation. Yeah, I've had a lot of therapy and I've been very much helped by that. And so that's trying to provide therapeutic services for people for which aren't so expensive because they're not easily provided in the state system, and the ones in the private system are really expensive.
That's different. It's a different kind of system that we have in the United States. But that sounds what you mentioned before about the I think it was the Sane Minds. I think it was a prevention for mental illness.
Yeah, that's more with younger people. It's like trying to get into schools, trying to teach some of these strategies, which are, as I said, that they work, they're fairly straightforward, but they're just not on the curriculum.
It sounds more like, I'm going to say suicide prevention and something like that in the United States, but it sounds similar to that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, obviously, you hope that that's the absolute exception, but yeah, I'm afraid to tell you that is a problem, and especially with young men, it's like the biggest cause of death in the UK is male suicide, young men killing themselves. So it's very real.
One more thing I'd like to ask is you have a book called The Black Rainbow. How you worked with healing your journey through depression. I was just
Well, just so in the chronology is that what I did is I've done 4 books. My first book was actually a poetry anthology for children. I've always loved poetry. I've always found it's a way to be comforted and consoled. So that was the first book I did. Then I did a memoir about my own experience of debilitating depression. That was Black Rainbow, and I included that in that around 50 poems that had sort of been my friends in need, really, as I was going through this journey when I was on my own. Sort of, to hear what other writers had written and other comforting words. And sometimes a poem, it can tell you a different story. It requires you to concentrate, to be in the moment, to sort of like unpack meaning. And that was very helpful as a sort of antidote to worrying. So I do love poetry. And so, yeah, that book, Black Rainbow, was very much my personal story. And then I moved on to Walking on Sunshine, sharing the strategies. And now my nutrition book, Happy Kitchen. So, yeah, I'm really excited. It's been a really exciting period to share what I've learned. I'm still learning. There's more to learn always, but I like to share as I go along.
Well, I guess that'd be final thoughts. Any final thoughts you want to leave to the listeners and about your journey?
Well, that's really sweet of you. I suppose what would have been most helpful when I was so ill was to realize I wasn't alone, and there are other people out there who understand and who do connect. And if I can reach one person and feel that, make them feel that they're not so alone, and also give them a little bit of hope, I do feel people do get better. You can recover. And if I can share ways of doing that, then you know what? Job done. So, yeah, I hope that maybe some of my books can help. I'm very honored. My Black Rainbow is published in the US, and my Walking on Sunshine is also published in the US with Simon & Schuster. And my Happy Kitchen is going to be coming out with Simon & Schuster in the autumn. So I'll be coming over to the States, and it's a real thrill.
I'll definitely share the links to all your books in the show notes of the podcast. Where they can reach you? Are there any questions about depression or your books? Where can they reach you?
Yeah, I love to connect and hear from people. I mean, I'm very active on social media. I share any research and things that I'm learning as I go along. So I'm on Twitter at Rachel Kelly Net. I have a website where I share blogs and my own writing and other people's blogs. That's rachelkelly.net. You'll find me there. I'm on Facebook. And also, if people like a resource, it's free. I created a Black Rainbow app. You can get that on Google and the App Store. And that's got it's got around 50 poems on it read by famous actors. if people not feeling up to the books, you can just press a button and listen to something consoling and soothing, and that is completely free. So yeah, I try to share resources, and as I say, share as much as possible what's helped me. I gave all my author proceeds on my Black Rainbow book to my mental health charities. So yeah, trying to share what I've learned, really.
Well, thank you, Rachel. Thank you very much for being on the podcast today. It was I'm great. Finally get to connect with you. I really appreciate being here.
Well, third time lucky, and my pleasure. It's an honor to speak to you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Well, that's all for this episode. Thank you for joining me on the No City on the Sideline podcast. And I want to thank Rachel Kelly from rachelkelly.net for being on the podcast. You can find all the show notes, links, and everything we talked about over at nosittingonthesideline.com/25. If you're interested in a new book, The Happy Kitchen, it'll be available in the United States in September. I'll put a link in the show notes to the Amazon UK website where you can purchase the book. Also, I think you may be able to purchase from a website. You can find all the show notes at nosittingonthesideline.com/25. Please comment on the podcast. Or just comment. Say hello. Let me know what you're thinking. You can find all my social media information over at nosittingonthesideline.com/contact. You also find my email over there. Also, in the right-hand corner, the speak pipe widget. You can leave a message. I'd like to hear what you're thinking. And also, please subscribe to the iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher, and the podcast catcher of choice. I want to thank you for your time. Until next time, have fun, get involved in your children, get involved in your life and your health. Also, tell your children you love them. Time's short. Enjoy every moment. Until next time, take care. God bless. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. Please subscribe to the newsletter to receive updates of the show and helpful and useful tips. This has been a production of Foley 42 Media.